Hello, welcome to another McLaren fans podcast. We're back after a little break over the summer for some holidays and everything else. This week, I'm joined by, as always, Sarah. Say hello, Sarah.
Hello, Sarah.
And we've got two guests this week, friends of the podcast, obviously. Mark Taylor, hello.
Evening, everyone.
And Andy Robinson, hello again.
Good evening, everyone.
Are they our special friends now, Andy?
Yes, they're almost like co-hosts, aren't they? They've been on that.
They are. We could call them that, in fact.
We might do. Let's do that. Yeah.
I've been called a lot worse. You're fine.
Beginning with C as well. Clever. Yeah, maybe something like that. Anyway, let's crack on. So, this is our 50th episode.
Wow, do I get a prize?
You get no prizes, no medal, nothing. We did our first one on the 7th of September 2020.
Wow.
That was just me and Sarah. We weren't brave enough to ask for guests at that point. We started it sort of during the lockdowns in the UK when the F1 came back on, and we were still essentially, we couldn't travel to go to races at that point. So between some chats with me and Sarah, we decided, wouldn't it be great if we started a podcast, talk about things McLaren like we would do normally at races, and hopefully get some of our friends on there to do the same along the way. I for one, never thought that we'd hit 5 podcasts, never mind 50. So that's quite impressive. And obviously, thanks to everybody out there who's been listening. However, things have changed slightly since then. Obviously, we can now go to races. We can meet up with people and we can chat in real life now. So we kind of thought, well, how does this affect what we were doing with the podcast? And what we found was we're trying to cover every race, but what we really want to kind of do is basically chat about McLaren, and whether that's racing, whether that's about obviously driver changes, new livery, t-shirts, kit releases, anything McLaren that's been
Any rubbish.
Any McLaren rubbish, basically. We want to do that. We want to cover a little bit more of historic McLaren as well, and kind of talk a little bit about that in the future. And mainly because of that, we thought, well, we don't really want to be tied to race weekends.
Yeah.
So until the end of this year, we're gonna basically have maybe 1 to 2 podcasts a month, same amount of time, but with a couple more guests on, and cover a variety of sort of subjects, what's topical, and maybe some historic stuff as well. We also want you to get involved. We want you to tweet us or send us some emails, send us your stories. We'd also like you to come on the podcast and be our guests. The more the merrier. We've made lots of friends, old and new, through doing this, and what would be great is at some point we all end up going races together, and there's a community because of this podcast. That would be brilliant. That would be the perfect thing to happen. So
if we can afford it, that would be lovely.
Well, yeah. Yeah. And hopefully you out there all keep listening as well, and that's one of the important things. So I just thought I'd start off with that and say thank you very much for everybody who's listened, and we do intend to keep going on, but in a slightly different way. So, and now for something completely different.
I'd just add to that, Andy, that sometimes we've had a few criticisms about whether we're prepared, whether we've talked enough about practice or bits of the race or this and that, but we've always maintained that
always have a list, always have a running order,
always have a badly spelt agenda of some description.
Yes,
but for us it was more about being together as friends, and it was meant to replace chit chat that you'd have down the pub or on the phone or when you saw someone. it was never meant to be a professional podcast. It's a McLaren fans podcast. The thing that links us all is that we're fans of McLaren. And if you don't like that, in the words of Hot Fuzz, jog on and go somewhere else. This is what we're here for. Just friends chatting about McLaren nicely.
And also, we'd like new friends to chat about McLaren.
Yeah, as
great.
long as they like McLaren.
Yes. So there you go. So yeah, on this week's show, we're going to talk drivers. Obviously, we're going to talk a little bit about Monza and Spa, and we're also going to talk about some of the things that the FIA F1 could change in relation to sort of how we can make the racing at the end of races like we saw at Monza a little bit more better, a bit more spectacular, and everything else like that. So we'll get into a bit of that as well. So let's start. Since our last podcast, obviously McLaren have announced Danny Ricciardo is leaving us. Whether or not you agree or disagree with the way it was handled is kind of a personal opinion for people, I guess. However, what do we think of that? What do we think of Dan going? That's Andy, what's your thoughts? Go for it.
I'm wearing my DR3 shirt, so my loyalties are pretty open. I'm a McLaren fan first, the driver second. So I think he tried. I think he really tried, and we tried a lot. We tried a lot to get things working. We gave him a lot of time.
Yep.
Every race last year, we were saying he's finding his feet, he's finding the car doesn't suit him.
Yep.
And I've used that saying every race this year as well. And I want Oscar to do brilliantly. I think as a young driver coming in, big change for Lando, having to be like the number one to marshal a team behind him. But I'm gutted for Dan in lots of ways. I wish he found his feet. I wish he found a couple more results rather than he had one great result. Don't get me wrong, one amazing result. But,
do you know when that was, Andy? Do you know when it was?
I think it might have been 365 days ago.
It is actually, and I will wish you a happy we won a race anniversary because it was today. Yes.
If he'd had, I know he's had one better result than Lando for the whole of his career at McLaren, but he only had one really good result. Lando's had podium. Even this year, he's had a podium.
Yep.
I just wish Dan had found his feet. I really do. I'd love to be singing Dan's praises right now, but I think he just struggled in the car.
Yeah, I think so too. And you know what? It's really hard because I get when you're saying there, I've been making excuses. I've been saying those phrases. Oh, he's just getting used to this. He's just getting used to that. We've all been doing that because we like him so bloody much. If he was just some tosspot that we got into the team that we didn't care about, we wouldn't be wanting him to do well. I think between the four of us, when we've talked about this, we've given him more rope than we've given anyone else. We've given him more chances, more favourable comments. If that was anyone else, we'd be like, oh man, why is it taking them so long to get used to the car? I mean, no offence. We watched Nick de Vries get in a car yesterday and drive the socks off of it. All right. I really like Daniel Ricciardo. I'll be sorry to see him go. I'm sorry the relationship didn't work out. But when it doesn't work out, something has to change. And a divorce was necessary, What do you think, Mark? Do you agree with those kind of statements?
I agree with everything that you say. And I think I said on the podcast last year that, even sort of before and since the Monza win, that there were times when, let's be quite honest, some of his form was a bit disappointing. We brought him in as a multiple race winner, multiple podium winner, someone who was competing for championships in, when Red Bull weren't as good as they are now, and we really wanted him to hit the ground running and to be consistent. I think it's time to be honest. He hasn't shown the consistency that we would like him to have done. we'll celebrate the race winner, no doubt, and hopefully in a year's time it won't be 2 years since we won a race next year, but we'll probably still be talking about it as a historic race for McLaren. But let's be honest, he probably didn't perform as I think certainly the four of us and maybe the broader McLaren fan base would like him to have performed.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna just on one point there. I saw quite an interesting snippet of an interview with Will Buxton and Jack Villeneuve. And normally, I wouldn't give anything Jack Villeneuve says the time of day because he is a bit of a mouth, right?
but he is a bit blunt, so you do get the truth.
Well, he said Daniel Ricciardo has not been a good driver since he left Red Bull. And I sat there and thought, okay. Then he went on to justify it, saying that in 4 years, he struggled at Renault, which is now Alpine.
Yep.
And had a one-off result where he won a race for 2 years. Then he's jumped ship to McLaren, where he struggled at McLaren, had a one-off blip of a fantastic race and won it. And is it the fact that he just can't get on with a car that's not a Red Bull? And that's a very good point. Actually, if you look at it, those 2 wins, if you take them out of the equation and look at them as outliners, his last 4 years, his results have been pretty shocking for a race-winning driver. You could put that down to the car, you could put it down to development, you could put it down to anything. But like you say, when you see somebody like De Vries jumping in a car, doing pretty well with it, in those 4 years, Lando's gone from a rookie that you thought, if he gets some points, that'll be really good, to thinking this guy can win races at some point. This guy's got talent.
I remember being in MTC. Do you remember when we were there and we were at that event and Stoffel was there, Andy?
Yeah.
Stoffel and Lando and Chris Lawton was on stage interviewing them, and we got to shout out questions. And, we're pretty vocal. We shout out questions. And one of the questions Lando was asked was, are you ready to become a McLaren F1 driver next year if that happens? Because at the time, he was our reserve driver. He was really humble and sheepish and like, oh, well, I'd probably be ready, but I don't know really, I'll just wait and see what happens. Whereas other drivers are quite balls out, aren't they? Like, yes, I am the best driver in the world, and all of that. And he wasn't like that at all. And when you look at how much he's grown up in the last 3 years, 4 years maybe now, I mean, he looks a lot older as well, which makes me feel better because when I had a photo with him, it was like having a photo with a child, not like that. But he's grown up into this role, and he said he didn't get on with the car this year. He had to make adjustments and changes to his style. So it really shows what a superstar he is. Andy, shoot.
Did I miss Danny Ric winning for Renault?
No,
Didn't he come third?
He got a podium.
He had an outlying result which was better than his bad results.
That's right. I just wanted to say what Zach's done. Zach, as a businessman, he's transformed our team. The sponsor, the way that everything's approached. Look, you cannot look at a millimeter of the car without there being a sticker on there for a massive sponsor. And we've got loads of massive sponsors. He's made a business decision, and that hasn't come overnight just to get rid of Danny Ric. Probably for the whole season, he's been coaching him, saying you need to start getting better results. You need to be achieving this, getting 10, getting 9th, getting in the points, getting through to Q3. Any business manager does that to their team, and they'll coach them through to try getting them, because no one wants to fire someone. It's costly to start with, and then having to replace him is costly as well. But he'd have been trying to coach him and trying to get him through, and he's finally had to make the decision, and he's made the strong decision. He's got a replacement with great potential. We have a driver that could win the World Championship tomorrow if we gave him the car, and we have a driver that could win it in 5 years' time if we give him a car. It's great choices. I can't fault what Zach Brown's done, and he hasn't done it in any other way but a purely business great way of doing it.
And he's getting some stick for that, isn't he, on Twitter? Have you read that, guys? All the not necessarily Daniel Ricciardo fans, but certainly seems to be the younger audience saying, "Oh, he's a snake. He's not." But they've got to remember, he's a businessman, and there's a business decision, and there's a board behind this as well. Zach takes instructions, and I think, I think he had to do something.
This is the way it's always been in F1 with drivers.
Yep.
If you don't
That's
perform, you're going to lose your seat. Doesn't matter if you missed a nice guy of shit. You go in.
That's why there's a contracts board for these reasons, because this shit happens. Sorry, Mark, you were trying to talk.
I was going to say, just to add to what Andy said, and I hope this isn't the case. We know F1 drivers make a lot of money anyway, and they're not just in the seats for that. But I think it was fairly well documented that when Danny Ric left Red Bull, he was offered a lot of money by Renault. He would have been offered a lot of money by us as well. Maybe the amount took a little bit of edge off him, and he didn't have that hunger like he used to. And even just little things like, when you think back to sort of his little radio snippets when he was at Red Bull, they've been an awful lot tamer over the last couple of years than then, and maybe he's just lost the edge himself over the last couple of years.
Yeah, there's an element of that. Let me throw a random one in there. I know we were going to mention Nick de Vries, but let me just throw this in here. Nick de Vries used to be a McLaren junior driver. For whatever reason, we parted ways with him. He has won GP2 or Formula 2, as we call it now. He has won Formula E. He has driven in World Endurance, and he has been very good. Would he have been a good person to throw into our car?
I'm gonna sort of say we will see in time, because it looks like these.
Answer.
Well,
Cheating.
I'm gonna back it up. I'm gonna back it up. Obviously, he was in our driver program. We've had other drivers that have come through our driver program and equally done as well in lower formulas. Stoffel Van Dorn, K-Mag. I'd say K-Mag was just a little bit maybe unfortunate with the situation with Alonso and stuff like that. So timing. So I'd say the jury's out until he actually does something in another car, probably a Williams next year. And I'd say that it's still even though we've taken Piastri to come in, it's still a risk. It's still a risk, but it's a hell of a lot of a less risk than having a 7-time winning driver getting a lot of money to having a rookie come in. You can give them a bit of slack and a bit of coaching, and maybe they can learn as well. And maybe that's the part of the issue, that Dan's style just doesn't fit how these new cars work and how they all break and everything else like that.
Yeah,
I think there's one big thing to remember with Nick de Vries is he was in Formula E for Mercedes last year. We've just brought kit and caboodle Mercedes Formula E team. We literally are rebranding everything. We would have had primary options on Stoffel and Nick's contracts for next year, and we haven't renewed either of them. As far as I know, I don't think either of them are racing for us next year, as far as I know.
I believe Rene Rast has been, but I haven't seen anything about Stoffel at all. So
if Zach liked Nick or Stoffel, one of them would have a contract, surely.
So let's turn that around on something you said earlier. Zach's a businessman. It's about business decisions, cold-hearted business decisions. But you've just said if Zach liked them.
But part of that business decision is you've got to like the person as well. You don't do business with people that you do not like.
I'm with Andy.
I don't know. Surely you do. Surely you hire someone you don't like that's a real bastard that's going to win a race. Surely that's a business decision, no?
No, because that one person can be that person that upsets the whole apple cart. That can be the Ronaldo in the Man United dressing room.
Going to go, Fernando.
Yeah, we've seen it in. We've seen drivers not be team drivers; they've been individuals, and they've paid off their team, their mechanics mortgage to make sure the mechanics loyal to them, not to the other driver. We've seen it all happen in the past, and it doesn't bode well for the team.
Yeah. Okay. Good discussion, guys. It is like we're down the pub, but no beer. But...
It is only Monday.
Yeah. Right. Well, obviously we know Dan's gone, and so we've got Oscar Piastri, another Australian, who's coming in. So, Mark, thoughts on that?
I think again, the jury's out until we actually get him in the car and see what he can do. I think so far as choices were concerned, was it down to him, between him and Colton Herta? I don't know. I think with Piastri, they've probably got someone who's pretty good, but going back to what we were talking about before, Zach being a businessman, I reckon he would be sort of the cut price option for the time being, perhaps.
Yeah.
Colton Herta, I think, would have brought a lot more marketing potential with more races being in America next year, and chance to grow the brand in America more. But I think only Zach and the board know the reasons why they've gone for Piastri as opposed to anyone else, whether that be Colton Herta or anyone else. Don't know what you guys think.
You're talking sense, Mark.
There's always a first.
If they put Colton Herta in, I would have just been as equally as happy.
Because equally as little about him.
Yeah, but I would have thought, I would have seen, like Mark says, there's the marketing opportunities for the US and everything else like that. But would he have performed? Would he have been race ready? Who knows? I'm just going to chuck a flip side in here. We're talking about drivers, but equally as important is the car.
Oh, the car. I remember that. That's the thing that the Danny Ricciardo fans seem to think is the only thing that's letting the team down. Yes. Sorry. Yes.
And do you know what? I'd agree with them if Lando wasn't outperforming Dan all the time. Yeah. And if it was, a couple of places here and there, fair enough. But it's, you see Lando going through the field and then Dan's stuck down in 17th, can't get out of a DRS train, whatever. I do think this car this year is a bit of a dog. It's a bit of a, sorry, Fraggle, sorry for that again.
Yeah, McLaren Doggo won't like that. Maybe it's a puppy because it's still so young and it's but it needs to grow a bit, doesn't it, year by year?
Yeah, this is definitely the development year and training, and I think a lot of other teams are using this season. None of us bar Red Bull and Max Verstappen are going to win the championship now, and kind of there'll be a lot of experimentation going on. What can we put on for next year? What are we developing, and everything else like that. And I just don't think the car has been great. I think last year's car was much better and much better balanced, but I also think there's so many issues that we've had with this. You go back to Bahrain where we had a car without brakes.
Yep.
So we've done well to develop it, but I just do not think that the concept or what we've built is great, and I don't think that's helped Dan in his situation. However, if both drivers were struggling, then I would have a lot of sympathy, and I would think that Dan had been done really hard by. But the gaps are just massive, and he's just not making the headway that he should be. As somebody with so much experience in F1, he should be able to at least outdrive some of the issues. Whereas Lando, who's still technically people look at as a bit of a rookie, even though it's his 4th year, is it, in F1? The guy's actually...
It's 3rd, isn't it? I don't know. I can't remember. I thought it was his 3rd year.
4 seasons.
Jesus, where's the time gone?
Yeah.
73 races, 4,000 odd laps.
So yeah,
podiums.
There you go. So I think there's a bit of that in there too. So,
but maybe that demonstrates that Dan's possibly lost the hunger and why we're going for a much younger lineup.
Yeah. I think that's fair enough. Anyone else got anything to add on drivers and cars and bits and pieces like that.
I just don't want another McHonda 4 years of development
Oh.
seasons.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. I love this team, but I was not enjoying those years.
No.
Yeah, I mean, our support is non-wavering and it's not going anywhere, but it could feel nicer.
It was the point where you would be the lone McLaren fans at a race, and
Yeah.
people would come up to you and say, "I really feel for you guys when
Yeah.
you've got a 48th place grid penalty to take, and 6 new engine in as many races at the beginning of the season. You're like kind of going, this is not good." And everybody would say, "Oh, I'm sure he'll be back soon." And look how hard it is to come back from the back. Williams a few years ago with Bottas and Massa in there were almost winning races and stuff like that. So it's not an easy thing, but yeah, there you go.
I think just speaking of cars and engines, I don't know if it's worth mentioning about there's some of the new players potentially coming into the engines, and now that Porsche and Red Bull have fallen out, maybe not us necessarily going with Porsche, but do you think we'll talk about moving on from Mercedes at some point?
I don't think we will until we get this car in the right place, because if you change another variable, your cocktail is all different flavors all mixed together.
And
I would say
I can't see us taking that risk again like we did with Honda with a new player.
The Mercedes engine hasn't been as good as it was last year, so maybe if we get another season like this year, perhaps.
All I would say on that is that Mercedes HPP are a force of nature, and look what they've managed to do in the past. I'm pretty sure they'll get back up there for next season. That's my feeling, my gut feel.
Yeah. I think so. Shall we talk about the races?
Yeah, there were some races. Yeah.
So obviously we've had Spa and Monza, two of my favourite tracks since the last podcast.
We had the Dutch race as well.
Oh yeah, we had the Zandvoort. Yes, well remembered.
Triple header.
Triple
headers that were never going to happen apart from that time in COVID. One off triple header.
And now there's quite a big gap till Singapore, so people can hopefully recover.
Yes. It's been a bit of a mixed bag for us. I think we looked strong in Monza, and hopefully we can continue that on. We did say that it wouldn't be a track that suited us as well as last year, but I thought we looked pretty strong and good for us in our car.
Yeah.
Not so much in Zandvoort, and certainly Spa wasn't particularly great either. But I think there's a couple of things for me. I think certainly the car is getting slightly better every now and then. I don't think we're
every now and then. I like that.
Well, yeah. I think there's some tracks that suit us and some tracks that don't. And I think sometimes we nail the setup and do all right. And then I think other times we're probably struggling to get the right setup for that track.
Yep.
I mean, Holland, when we went into Dutch Grand Prix, practice one, it was looking lightning. We were like 4th and 5th on practice one, and I was like, this is going to be a great weekend. And then we kind of went backwards a little bit.
Are we the team that keeps our engines turned up while everybody's has got theirs turned down in the practices, and then sort of when it comes to qualifying, we're like, oh dear.
Yeah. It does feel like sometimes we put in a glory lap and we all go, oh, it's looking good. And then,
was it Belgium on FP3 where Lando was like 4th and then just nowhere in quali?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that was so close. If only it had been an hour later, 2 hours later.
Just teasing.
The less said about Spa, the better, really. Both of us out the point.
Yeah. And then obviously we've got Singapore next, which is twisty, turny.
Very interesting to see how any of the new cars might conk out in the heat, the humidity. This is a grueling circuit for the cars, and we haven't been there for a couple of years, have we? So I'm interested to see what reliability issues might surface with anybody.
Yeah, I think there's a good chance of that. Hopefully not us, given that we've just had one this weekend. So
Fingers crossed.
I mean, this weekend we were actually looking pretty good.
Yeah.
Dan got brought in a bit earlier than his strategy to cover off Gasly, I think. He
Yeah.
got brought in the lap after, and that kind of just bumped him down eventually, unfortunately. And Lando took those medium tyres forever. I didn't see any pre-race strategy that said do medium softs. It was all soft to hard or medium to hard. It was, that was a drive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if we hadn't have had the safety car at the end, we could have just been maybe one higher, you know.
Yeah. Here's a quick poll, right? Should we have some new rules on the safety car for the last 5 laps, for instance, of a race? No?
I think they actually followed the rules this time,
did,
whereas
didn't they?
last time they
Right.
didn't.
Andy, you asked the question beautifully.
Yeah, it did. However, my worries were, why were the cars going by a load of marshals standing next to Daniel Ricciardo's car with a recovery vehicle about a metre from the track on a thin area, when they could have, we know what's happened in the past with a car hitting that. Surely, if it's on a thin part of the track like that, that's your reason for a red flag.
Yeah.
Not, oh, shall we make it more exciting at the end? Ha, ha, ha. Your red flag should be about safety, yeah?
Yeah. I think there should be, not like the red flags that we get normally, like where they go, oh, I can go
Pink
for the
flag,
toilet.
maybe?
Yeah,
Not
I
quite
can go to the
red.
toilet and you get a 10-minute one or something. Maybe like, right, we've got the cherry picker on the track. We're going to line you all up in the pit lane, come back out, do a formation lap when it's off, and then we'll do a race start and finish the race from there. Because like you, Sarah, I think having, even as people have said on Twitter and everything else, but they're going quite slowly. I don't care. There's a big sort of planned vehicle on the track that if somebody does a Ericsson hit me thing, or somebody loses something, or there's oil on the track or anything like that, and they spin into it, it's fingers crossed, it's not going to be pleasant. Hopefully not fatal, but it's not going to be pleasant. And you don't want to be sitting there going, oh, look, the halo saved somebody again, because it shouldn't have to get to even that point, really.
If there's that danger, red flag it. But the end of that race, if there wasn't for that truck on that truck on the track, if it wasn't danger, then it shouldn't have been red flag, because the rules don't allow for that. And I had this debate at work with a few people who are they're recent fans, thanks to a few TV shows. They've got into Formula One, and they're like, oh, but for the entertainment, we should just red flagged it and had a 5-lap sprint. It's a sport. It's not entertainment. You don't finish a football match 0-0 and say, let's do penalties just so we have some entertainment. Like if Max Verstappen is 30 seconds ahead of Charles, I don't want that to be artificially create a race for the last 5 laps. Max has earned that 30-second lead. He's earned the dominant win. Let him celebrate it. It's sport. Sport might have boring days. Sport might have really, really bad races, and it might have really uninteresting races. But that makes you appreciate the better ones more. It's a roller coaster. It's not entertainment. We don't follow a TV series. We don't follow some kind of make-believe scenario. We follow a sport.
And it is a roller coaster. Yes.
Do you ever remember, like about 10 years ago, Bernie Ecclestone suggested that all the tracks are wet for every single. Yes. That's kind of the same madness and idea as that would be. So thankfully we moved on from him.
Yeah. Right. Well, that's pretty much it for this episode. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back after the Singapore and Japan races. Sarah, I believe that you have some new products.
I do. This is my Daniel Ricciardo shoey keyring with his little bottle of champagne there. Look.
That's cool.
Get them while he's still in the car.
I have got a Carlos one, which I know is not McLaren, but we still like him really because he was ours and he didn't do anything bad whilst he was with us. And yeah, and a nice Lewis one as well, with which you can't see very well in the light. I now noticed there.
Lewis's shiny helmet, excellent.
It is Lewis's very shiny helmet, yes. So yes, and remember, people, the Google Wheels are still available. The coolest thing ever. Get your Google Wheel. Thank you very much. I will tweet.
Okay, yeah. Sarah will put a link up there. Once again, thanks for joining us, and we'll speak to you all the next couple of races.
Thank you.